Today we're going to be talking about some trade rumors that I've been hearing over the grapevine the last few weeks. And let's start with a big name this free agency, Andre Drummond. The defensive metrics for him make him seem like a really great player, right? He's a big time rebounder, leads the NBA in rebounds, scores a lot of points, but there's no real evidence to suggest that he's plays winning basketball. Throughout his entire career, he's played with the Detroit Pistons, he's played with now the Cleveland Cavaliers. The farthest he's gone in the playoffs, from my memory, is the 8th seed. So under Toronto's system, my question is, can he become a winning contributor to a team that has potential championship aspirations in the next coming years? Because I think if you get him, you have to, first of all, be committed that, he's going to stay long term, right? Because he's on a 1-year contract. He's the kind of player that we don't really know what he wants, right? Does he want to be a winner? Does he want to be the kind of guy who can just, put up big stats and get paid lots of money because, he's doing that right now in Cleveland. Maybe he's happy, but clearly they're trying to shop him. And I think that a part of him wants to be on a championship team. I just think that all these years of losing, potentially he wants to be a contributor. And on Toronto, he'd have to buy into being, that fourth option, because making a move for a guy like Andre Drummond is a win now sort of move. You're basically saying we're all in right now. We're throwing our chips in and we're trying to win, not necessarily just now, but over the next 3 to 4 years. We want to win with this core. Maybe keeping Lowry on the roster, maybe shopping him for a younger player who better fits the timeline potentially, but making a move for Drummond seems like a risky play to me. It's a high risk, low reward situation, because if you add him, does it really raise your ceiling? Does it make you an NBA championship caliber team? That's my big question. Can they beat the Nets? Can they beat the Bucks? Can they beat the Celtics? Can they beat Philly, the Heat? Like, these are 5 teams that are going to be in contention the next few years. Can Toronto get past this heavily stacked cast of people and players and teams in the Eastern Conference, let alone to get to the LA Lakers and take down that team? Obviously, he provides a big body player, a guy who can grab rebounds, a guy who can block shots. And that's something that Toronto needs right now. Aaron Baines hasn't been able to give that. Boucher still, as his nickname says, he's a slim guy. He's the slim duck. So he's the kind of player that when you match up against a Joel Embiid, you don't want Boucher on him, right? You really don't want that matchup, because for Toronto in a 7-game series against Philly, hypothetically, you're not beating that team. Like, that's just not happening with the currently constructed roster. So for me, I think that he provides a lot of value from that front. However, the $28 million 1-year contract is a risky play. $28 million is a lot to make up. Do you trade 1-for-1 Kyle Lowry? That's an option. But then you're lowering your ceiling as a championship team, because you're getting rid of your primary point guard, potentially your best player, and most importantly, the heart and soul of your team. And then Drummond can end up leaving in the offseason to go to an American team because he's an American guy. And that's one of the things that scares me long term, is if you do make this move, it could end up backfiring on you significantly. And the Kawhi Leonard move was a great move because you add a superstar, you raise your ceiling, and that team was in the mediocrity bubble for a long time, and they're able to raise their ceiling automatically by adding Kawhi Leonard without having to mortgage your future. It was really the perfect trade in hindsight. This trade would be challenging because, first and foremost, $28 million, if you want to keep Kyle Lowry, means you have to give up at least Norman Powell. That's $10 million to make up that 80%. And then you'd also have to give up Aaron Baines, of course, to match that salary. That puts you at $17 million. And then you probably have to add in Stanley Johnson and Patrick McCaw, which isn't a lot, but you're just kind of depleting your depth a little bit, because a guy like Stanley Johnson gets minutes, a guy like Powell plays a lot of minutes. And obviously you're just swapping Baines for Drummond, so it would be a good move. But then the question is, what does Cleveland want on top of that? There are a lot of suitors currently for Andre Drummond. And is the market suggesting it's 1 first-round pick? Is it 2 first-round picks? How far does that go? How many picks do you have to give them before they're willing to give away Andre Drummond? That's another big question for me. Obviously, this would be a win-now move for Toronto, and I'm not sure if you would commit long-term. So in my mind, this is a thumbs-down kind of move, just because long-term, I don't think this move would benefit Toronto. And I feel like the better move is this one I'm about to talk about next, which is a move for Lonzo Ball. And obviously you're thinking, why Lonzo Ball? We have 30,000 guards on this Raptor squad. Well, the reason why you'd want Lonzo Ball is because he has the potential to be a better guard than the current guard statuses that we have. Malachi Flynn, Terrence Davis, Lonzo Ball has a higher ceiling than those guys. So if you can pry him away by giving up, say, Norman Powell, who's making a similar amount of money, and then attach potentially a first round pick or some kind of vet to help them as they try and push for the playoffs, because we know the Pelicans are going to want to win now with that core of Zion and Ingram. They're trying to keep those two together, add pieces around them. I think Powell would actually fit really well next to those guys. He can stretch the floor really well. He doesn't need the ball in his hands, and he's athletic and a great defender. And the thing with Lonzo Ball for the Toronto Raptors is he's more of a project player. So Toronto will be looking to build long-term with a guy like that. As we know, he's an improved shooter from his first year. His form is changing over time. His shooting mechanics are getting slowly better, and his shooting percentages are reflecting that. He's having a tough year so far, but being the third fiddle in New Orleans is challenging behind Zion and Ingram, and he doesn't appear to be a part of their long-term future when you consider that they couldn't agree on a long-term deal to keep him there through restricted free agency, and now he's going to be entering restricted free agency this year. So Toronto is a team that could potentially push to make a trade for him and then sign him to, a 4-5 year, let's say a 4-year deal, right? Something that you can actually do. 5-year deal, I don't think you could do with a guy like Lonzo Ball right now. And then maybe you could give him something that doesn't mortgage your future, like Powell and a first round pick, or Powell and maybe another asset that they want. And I think that this kind of player has a lot of potential. Lonzo Ball, as we know, is a good rebounder at the guard position. He's a great defender, and he's an elite passer too. He's shown to have a lot of skill. And if he does sign Toronto, you're looking for a long-term solution to the current roster construction. And yeah, there's a lot of guards in Toronto, but let's be realistic here. Kyle Lowry is not going to be a Raptor 3 or 4 years from now. I doubt he's going to be part of that roster. So you're going to have to look to build to the future. And I think that a core of Lonzo Ball and Fred VanVleet in that backcourt is actually pretty enticing, because Lonzo can handle the ball as well. He can make plays for others, and he's athletic and get into the paint for Toronto, which is something that they desperately need, considering they're a dependent three-point shooting team. And if you have a guy like Lonzo attacking the rim constantly, then you're going to see a lot more open looks from three, because despite what you think, he's still a devastating player in the paint because he's so tall, has so much length, and is a very great ball handler and reliable passer as well. He just makes him a really good threat as a starting guard for Toronto. And long term, I really like the fit there with him. And I just think that despite everything, Toronto should look to rebuild. They've had a tough season so far. There's no reason they can't pick up maybe another solid guy. There's a lot of really good players, obviously, in this draft class, like Cade Cunningham, etc. So for the Toronto Raptors, there's a lot of potential to, in a couple of years from now, if you make a few moves, trade a few guys, and add some younger players, that this team could look really, really good in a few years with the core of potentially a guy like Lonzo Ball next to Fred VanVleet, who you can start giving him the keys to the team, which is something he wants to do. And he's proven every step down the line that he's able to take on a bigger role in an effective way, right? He was first a bench player, and now he's a starter, and he's still a really good player and has gotten better every time you've given him more opportunity and more responsibility. So if you make him the primary guard for Toronto, I'm sure he would also thrive in that situation as well. And then you pair an undersized guard in VanVleet with an oversized guard in Lonzo, and it's honestly a nice fit defensively as well, which is one of the things you have to look at when you're building to the future. We know defense is an essential part of winning a championship. So if you had a guy like Lonzo, already a good defender, long hands, he's got good reaction speed, and he's really, really young and has a lot of potential. He's averaging like 10, 7, and 7 right now, and he did that last season as well. And like when you see a guy averaging those numbers, like there has to be more potential to unlock there. That's already good numbers. And a good rebounding guard is also really important for Toronto, considering that their rebounding has struggled as well. They could use more help in that front. So a guy like Lonzo could be a solution to that problem right now in Toronto, while also building towards a better future for them as well.